dutiful to your parents. It tells you, do not kill a girl because she's born as a girl. It says, do not commit injustice and imbalance in your measurements. So these things, I don't need to be Arab to understand this message of God. I don't need to be an Arab to understand that there is a heaven and hell in afterlife. I don't need to be an Arab to understand that God has created heaven and hell as a place of reward and punishment. I don't need to be an Arab to understand that there will be a day of judgment. I don't need to understand God's all of these messages by being an Arab. In fact, history today, from 1400 years ago, demonstrates that the majority of the people who are Muslims are non-Arabs in the first place. So Arabic language did not stop people from becoming a Muslim. So there are wisdom behind why the last messenger was given an Arabic Quran.
You're not fully answering the question I've just asked you.
Yeah.
You focused on.
Can you get my?
You focused on the language of the Quran. What I'm asking you is why an almighty,
Jesus is the only way, the truth, and the
powerful entity
Don't worship pagan God.
capable of creating the
Don't
universe
worship pagan God.
would need a middleman.
I'm not the king. I'm not the king.
You would expect something as powerful as what you're describing to produce within a split second
The truth and the light.
1,000 books in 1,000 languages for everyone to read and understand.
For humanity.
Right?
Muhammad is
Now,
a bad
second
role model
point.
for humanity.
Can you not touch me?
So,
Okay, thank you.
How do you know that this man lived more than a few hundred years ago, who claimed to be the last messenger of God and who received a message through Jibreel or Angel Gabriel? Right? How can you be sure that he was not mentally ill?
Sure.
That he was not he was not seeking attention? That he was not seeking power?
So,
Yeah.
so you said mentally ill, seeking
I'm not saying he
attention.
is.
No, the
I'm
Prophet.
saying
The
it
Prophet.
could be, you don't know.
Yep.
Yeah.
How do we know? So this is
which has a satanic information. Satanic verses. He's going to get sense to you.
so. Your first question is, why doesn't an all-powerful God, Creator, sends hundreds and thousands of books to all individuals? It's like this. Why doesn't the Creator individually give a book to one on self and guide them? Okay.
He will tell you.
Now, we are talking about the wisdom of our Creator.
Don't mention Allah
Why?
on your face.
Allah
You go
does
ahead
things
before you
in a certain way.
mention anybody.
What He does and how He does is His prerogative. For example, you can ask yourself, why didn't God make me a woman? For example, why didn't look? If somebody asks this question, why didn't God make me a woman? You can ask this, unending, never-ending questions by questioning the action of God, right? And then you will say, why? The simple answer to this question is this. لا يسأل, I will translate. عما يفعل وهم يسألون. I think this is how the ayah goes. He would not be questioned for what he does, what God does, but us will be questioned for what we do, right? Amma yuf'alun, what we do. Yeah, amma yuf'alun. So God creates, does things, actions, because He's wise and He's just, right? He's all knowledgeable, He's just. So where He does these things, why did He create the heavens and the earth in this way and not in another way? Why does water boil 100 degrees in our earth? This is from His wisdom. Why? He could have done other billion possible ways, right? So by questioning this, it doesn't really gives us any means of saying, okay, the other ways may be better and so on. So when it comes to guidance of people, the Creator tells us, He sends, or rather he guides people, whether one is grateful or ungrateful. He guides them, shows them the way. He says, إِنَّا هَدَيْنَاهُ السَّبِيلَ إِمَّا شَاكِرًا وَإِمَّا كَفُورًا. He shows, I'm translating, just to tell you that I'm not making this up. This is in the Quran. God certainly, إِنَّا هَدَيْنَاهُ السَّبِيلَ, He shows you the two parts, whether you are grateful or ungrateful. So individually, on an individual level, God gives us His guidance. God gives us the guidance. But when you, brother, it's okay. Be patient, brother. Jazakallah khairan.
Follow a pagan practice.
It's okay. Speaker's corner. We have to learn patience. So I know it's difficult for many of us, but Jazakallah khairan. Barakallah. Now, I wasn't rude. I'm sorry, my brother.
No, it's okay.
I'm saying it's important. I'm reminding everyone to be patient. Barakallah fi. I apologize if it came rude to you. I shouldn't have said that, but that's important.
Accept the religion.
Yeah. Anyway, so
Respect the religion. We don't accept.
the divine guidance on an individual level comes. God shows. Imagine a idol worshipper.
Could I just ask?
Can I-
asking people a few questions.
Can I finish our conversation
One
first?
second. Just really politely. If I owned a house, if you owned a house and I came into your house and I took over your house, would you be happy? No? Why is Israel allowed to do this in front of everyone to Palestine and no one's saying anything? That's a simple argument.
Okay, never mind.
Right, that's another
point.
Another debate.
No, it's
Yeah,
a
we'll
fair
save
point.
it-
Fair point, but we
we'll
can
save it
discuss.
for another
It's not
day.
relevant to what we're discussing. It's a fair point,
No,
not relevant
yeah.
to discuss. So, God, in His wisdom, He created us not to be forced to believe.
Please don't say God.
Right? Not to be forced to believe.
Say Allah.
If everyone had sent a book by God
But Allah.
and they're absolutely sure it's from God, there is no choice remaining anymore.
There is no
People
God but
need
Allah.
to be in a particular scope of freedom to use their intellect to arrive at the truth that God sends to prophets and messengers.
It's the same argument used.
No. You can say Christians whatever,
Yeah, it's the same
but this is
argument. I heard it.
this is an important point because otherwise there is no point of believing or even saying I have freedom of choice or free will, because you will not have freedom of choice. Imagine now God tells you directly here, I am God and worship me, right? You have no choice but to accept that He's your God, your Lord. There's no point saying, oh, I will be good and I won't be bad, because you are not under any choice anymore. You are now forced and compelled to do that. So Creator, in His wisdom, He sent prophets and messengers and gives guidance through them by demonstrating, firstly, that you can actually verify them as prophets and messengers of God by using your intellect that God has asked you to use. He does that, and then once you do and accept it, then you have now passed your test. Because this life is not that we are here for mutual joy and happiness only. Islam doesn't tell you this information. The reason why we are suffering is part of the overall framework in which God tests us, right? Tests us.
That's what your religion tells you.
That is what we can tell you will make sense. If it doesn't make sense to you, we can have another discussion.
Yeah.
Now, then, when God gives us a test, to fulfill that test using our heart and our mind, our eyes and our intellect and our hearings, to accept the truth, obviously there are people who would not be able to do that, right? Because they want to go against God's message that He has sent. They will try to say, I'm going to worship a tripod, I'm going to worship a man, I'm going to worship a God who has a son, who has a daughter, who has an uncle, who has a brother, and so on and so forth. People will try to continue to do that because of the traditions they may have inherited. So, God sends a book, a revelation, with proof and evidences, so that people can use their ration faculty, the intellect, to verify that this is from God. And this is what I was talking about. I give you certain examples. So, why does God allow us this? Because God wants us also to develop. He didn't just create us in one perfect state. That is not what Islamic epistemology and its beliefs and all these messages in ontology. Islam tells us that we have been created so we can grow intellectually in our maturity. We can strive ourselves to be better and better. We are not like animals, Islam tells us. We are better than the animals, right? Some people can be worse than the animals, like we have seen earlier on, the attitude that people are demonstrating.
Like Muhammad.
Right.
Muhammad having sex with
you finish your...
Shut up! Don't say that again. It's stupid. It's stupid.
I haven't finished your second point, but you can talk about the first one I've
You
talked
finish
about.
all your points and then I...
Okay.
You are more
Would you mind asking him not to shout on my ears?
Muhammad was the one who had a sex with the daughter-in-law.
This man, he's stupid.
So this Muhammad is the worse than animal. This Muhammad is the worse than animal.
I would be very much obliged if you tell him
he cannot
to stop shouting in my ear so I can listen to you.
He cannot be a
Seriously,
good role.
we're trying to have a conversation. We're trying to have a conversation.
Because I'm answering this
He's
person.
trying to think.
I'm answering
He's
this
trying
person.
to think and
I'm
say...
answering this
worse
person.
than pig.
Your
You are worse
Muhammad
than pig.
is a pedophile.
He's not listening.
He had a sex.
So I have to go somewhere else because my ears are hurting.
When she was not menstruating.
Let's go to this
Over
side.
there.
Sorry, brother.
Muhammad had a sex with that girl.
Do you want to take a seat? It's actually dry, it's clean, okay? Take a seat if you want. Okay, standing up. Okay, that's fine. Can someone bring my ladder, yeah? I'll bring all these things. Here's okay? Oh, mashallah. Much cooler. I hope he doesn't come and follow us.
Yeah. Okay, so
Right.
carry on.
Okay.
Yeah.
The second point is, how do we know that this Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not mentally ill?
Yeah.
Someone who's seeking attention, someone who's seeking power, and is there any other thing?
Or someone who tells fibs, or someone who
Someone?
someone who tells fibs. You know, someone who's trying to seek. You know, he wants to make a name for himself.
Yep,
Yeah.
name.
He wants power. He wants to attract the crowds.
Yep,
Yeah. And be famous.
famous. Yeah,
Yeah.
famous. Okay,
Right, yeah.
okay. Let's deal with that.
Yeah.
So we're talking about two things here. One is the individual state of being, his mental state, his mental health,
Yeah.
and the other one is the motive.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how do we know, for example, someone is mentally ill? A mentally ill individual demonstrates in their behavior and interactions that mentally unstable, mentally ill.
Right.
Do you agree?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fine. So when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us the Quran, in which there are guidance as to how you conduct societal affairs, how you run a country, how you have your economic system and social system, education system, how you conduct relation between other nations and tribes and so on, how you have an outlook in ethics and morality, how you live your life individually and in society. To give you some examples, he tells you, okay, that you need to be truthful, you need to be reliable and trustworthy, you need to be honest in your dealings, in your affairs, in your interactions. Everyone needs to do that. He sets a framework in which the society is raised based on this ethics and normality or morality, and people will be accountable in that society. If people, for example, they rob you, they kill you, they rape you, they plunder you, your wealth, take your land away, your house away, like the other brother was saying earlier on, when someone comes to your house and takes your house away and so on. Now, he gives you reasonable, acceptable laws. For example, he says, if someone kills, you don't say that you give him £20 fine, because we know it doesn't work. Killing, murder does not stop by saying the penalty for murder is $20 or 20 cents or £20. It doesn't work. So what Prophet ﷺ came with from God, laws and regulations, what we call Sharia, the law, in which you, if you are a lawyer, you will understand how even the deterrent aspects makes the human living such a better experience under Islamic law when it's implemented. Today it's not implemented, and that's why we see all this chaos and corruption and all these things, fitna and fasad, all around the world. But when it was implemented, to just give you one example, not too long ago, even in Saudi Arabia, right, which is the monarchy today, right, people when the time of prayer came, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. You know what they did? Time for prayer came. We need to go to the mosque, the masjid. They will leave their shops. It could be a shop selling gold and jewelry. They didn't need to lock it under lock and key. Put a cloth over it, open. No one needs to stay there. They will go and pray and come back with this confidence in their heart and mind that no one is going to steal. How did it transform a society of pagans who were burying their daughters alive because they were born as a daughter? Islam came and transformed them into this state of being. So Islam gives us all of these laws and regulations and teaching. This does not reflect someone who is mentally unstable. So this is my point there briefly. There's no point going into too details.
Right.
If you want to question and criticize it, I can go into detail. Second thing about motives. Now, if someone is not a messenger of God, an imposter, a fraudster, a fake individual, that person needs a motive. Why is that person claiming to be a prophet of God? Is that claim going to give him some credibility, authority, power to do what he's trying to do? That's people's motives. Maybe he wants to get famous, as you said. Do you know what people did at that time? When he was calling the people to worship none but God and abandon the worship of the creation, abandon worshipping idols that you craft with your own self. When he asked people to worship God, at one point they said, you know what? Stop calling us to this one God. Tell us what you want. If you want to be the king, we will make you our king. If you want wealth, just tell us what you want. We will make you the richest among us. If you want women, just name them. You can have any woman that you want. Fame, power, authority, fulfillment of desires. You can have all of this materialistic need fulfilled, but stop calling to worship one God. Do you know what he said? Because if he was an imposter, he has succeeded. He has succeeded in his plan. Now he can be a king and he can control the people. Now he can be the richest person and he can control the people in power and authority and so on and so forth.
He's dead.
But he said, on another occasion, if you gave the sun on one of my hands, on the right, for example, and the moon on the other, I would not stop this call until God, prevents me from doing so. So a sign of sincerity and the absence of this false materialistic motives is demonstrated. This is about fame, power, and so on. Name for himself. He was already famous. He was known as Sadiq al-Amin, the trustworthy, the reliable. People did not know him other than being someone truthful and trustworthy all his life. He was famous to the point that this is how they arbitrated their matters with him. So at one point they wanted to rebuild the Kaaba, in which was that stone that they need to place. Tribal disunity started growing. I want to place this. Our tribe should place this stone on that corner of the wall. Another tribe says, no, it should be our responsibility. We are more noble than you. I'm paraphrasing the history. They started this disunity and problems within themselves. And they then eventually said, you know what? This is not how we can resolve. It's going to amount to a war. Like over a camel, we've been to a war for 40 years. This, who knows what's going to happen to our nation with our tribal, disunity because of that. They said, but we know someone who can arbitrate and solve the problem. They found Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they were happy to make him the arbitrator, right? So he was already a famous individual. He was already known to him. So it wasn't about making a name for himself. Attention and power, he already had the attention. Power, it was offered to him, but he rejected. How did he live when he had the power? That's another test for a fake individual. If someone is fake and imposter and fraud, when they have the power, you will see in their life, in their actions, the demonstration of someone's bit of fraud. They will live a life of luxury. you know, living in a palace like this, with all they need, right? Food and wealth and clothing, whatever, you name it. People will be like on his feet, kissing his feet and worshipping him, like some people used to do with kings and monarchs and so on, right? They will be humbling down to him. But he even said to his people, when he was coming along, right? And he was, the people were sitting, his companions, and they stood up. He says, no, you don't need to rise up for me. He stopped them from even rising up. Look what we do in our cultures. When a teacher comes, we stand up. When something happens, we stand up in the courts, for example. Prophet ﷺ said, no, you can't elevate him like this, right? So when he passes away, don't make his tomb a place of worship. That is what we are demonstrating. So how did he live his life? Okay, having all the power to control 1/3, or even at that time, a lot. How did he live his life? When he died, we can see. When he passed away, he left his possessions. Now we can see how much heavy bolts of the banks that you need for the world to transfer his wealth to there, right? He had a shield from someone else that was given to him, which he was holding, because he was a trustworthy individual that needs to be returned. He had a jar in which there was water. He had a bed made of these date palm leaves and a stone brick, for his pillow. And some utensils were maybe some dates, something left. That was his possession. Now, an individual who is a fraudster, a fake, wants fame and glory and power and authority, living a life like this and leaving these possessions as inheritance, this doesn't demonstrate that he was someone who had this ulterior materialistic motive.
There are loads of people who've left their position after they died and they're not prophets.
Let's understand one point.
Okay.
Does this sound to you someone who has a materialistic motive?
You haven't explained. You've missed a few bits.
Let's talk about
in the biography.
No. Let's talk about all these things. When it comes to power, fame, authority, making a name of himself, seeking attention, and so on and so forth. Besides being mentally unstable and producing a Quran, no one can match, whether with its laws or its sciences. Imagine if this was the justification for progress in scientific knowledge, we should induce people to be mentally ill. Because what Quran has brought from its sciences and teachings, which you think could be a mentally ill person's product, we need to make every scientist mentally ill. Because that is the level of what the Quran has brought to the world sphere. So, does it sound to you that he was after power?
Right, can I respond?
Yep.
Yeah, from the beginning, and then I move on to the biography that you gave of the Prophet Muhammad.
Go ahead.
Right. Now, first of all, if it's important for the whole of mankind to recognize the existence of a supreme being who has created everything in the universe, why make the message so obscure?
Message is not obscure.
It is obscure.
No.
Because it's coming from, it's not prime, it's not the
Okay, can I stop you for 1 second? Just to clarify that point. The Quran says this is book from God, point number 1. So now you know where it's coming from, and this here tells you, worship me and none else. And here is the evidence that is from me. So it gives you the evidences. How is this obscure?
So there's no evidence.
Sorry. 1 moment. I will entertain all your criticisms. When you say there is no evidence, no. When you say there's no evidence, please. What's your name, my friend? What's your name?
My name is Gilles.
Gilles, I'm Mansur. Gilles, when you are already saying there's no evidence, when even the very talk that I gave earlier on, I was offering evidence. So you can't say there's no evidence. To you, what you can say is, I have not heard of convincing evidence. No. Now, I can say the only evidence that convinced me is when God tells me personally. But is this really an objective way of verifying God exists? Is this an evidence for everyone? No, because that may be that you have made up something of a criteria for your own self, knowing that no evidence on earth, even if, let me tell you what the Quran says. If the unbelievers saw there were stairs going up the heaven, the dead spoke. You know what people will say? You will not say, now I accept the evidence. They will say, we are bewitched. We are deluded. This is an illusion or a delusion. We have been under the influence of magic. There is nothing in an insincere, arrogant individual when it comes to evidence, because no evidence will be convincing to them. But a person who is sincere, wanting to know the truth, they can see the evidence. When the people saw Prophet Muhammad ﷺ for the 40 years of their life, and when he said, I'm a messenger of God, sufficient for them as an evidence he was a messenger. They didn't need to hear anything about the science that I was talking about earlier. Not needed. It was unnecessary. Why? Because people's level of evidence is something that they know what is convincing for them. You may have this ultra demand for evidence because you know in your heart you don't want to accept any evidence. If I were to ask you, I'm going to ask you directly. Name me 2 examples of evidence that will convince you without a shadow of doubt that God exists. Number 1.
Manifestation would be one.
Manifestation
would be one.
Manifestation.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Yeah. Able to talk and that.
Able to talk.
Yeah.
God able to talk.
Directly to everybody.
Directly. Hang on.
To everybody.
Hang on.
To everybody. Not.
If you saw in the sky someone like says, I am God. You saw it. We all saw it. And it says, I am the creator of the heavens and the earth. If God were to manifest himself here and told you that, so now you've ticked the box, you'd accept him?
I'm not sure.
See, we stop there.
No, let me finish.
Okay, finish.
Because in order to assess the truth, you have to be rigorous. That's why being a scientist is a very difficult job. You have to. You have to search, and sometimes you have to go back onto your assumption. Yeah. And you should be
your assumption of manifestation.
You should be humble enough.
Yeah.
To accept that maybe what you believe in might not be true.
We're not discussing that. We're discussing what would convince you. Manifestation. Now, what picture do you have of God that when He manifests, or when it manifests, when God manifests?
It never happened anyway.
One second, please. Now, it's your chance to demonstrate that you know what you're asking for. So, tell me, what are you expecting of God that He would manifest as what?
You're making the claim.
No, I'm not making the claim. I have reversed the table. I have said, what would convince you without a shadow of doubt? Why did I make that qualifier? Without a shadow of doubt means unquestionably you will be convinced. You said, I am not sure. That means you were not convinced what you asked for. So let me ask you again. I'm going to probe on this. Number 1, manifestation. What are you expecting to God to manifest that you are absolutely convinced that He is God?
A manifestation has to be assessed thoroughly. So I can't give you a straight answer straight away.
I'm listening. I'm going to listen. Tell me, what are the manifestations that you're expecting so I can tick your boxes?
Let's use a phenomenon. You know, in the past, when people saw a rainbow in the sky, they thought it was a God creating it, until the scientist understood refractions, the work of prism, and how.
I hope you don't mind. I'm just sitting there. I'm a bit tired.
That's okay.
Apologies. You're more than welcome to sit beside me.
Okay. They understood how light was composed. So then, from then on, they can ascertain that's what the rainbow is made of. Now, you're asking me if I see something extraordinary.
What do you mean by extraordinary?
Right, something we've never seen before.
Like what?
Yeah.
Because
let me tell you.
Microphones with you.
Oh, microphones switched up. Beg your pardon. Sorry.
Let me tell you something absolutely silly, like a big hand.
It's with me.
A big hand's coming from the sky.
Big hands, manifesting big hands. No. I'm going to take anything.